More determined than ever to break Marshall's hold over the Supreme Court, Jefferson adds 3 Republican justices by 1807, filling 2 vacancies and increasing the overall number to 7. One reason people were reluctant to serve on the Supreme Court was that justices had to ride a federal circuit. One justice called the assignment intolerable. Marshall's circuit included Richmond, where he lived, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Twice a year, he made the 170-mile trip there and back. And it's as a circuit judge that he will next clash with his cousin Thomas Jefferson when he presides over Vice President Aaron Burr's trial for treason.
Aaron Burr was a brilliant, and powerful person, extremely well-connected and extremely ambitious.
Thomas Jefferson hates Aaron Burr, and he hates Aaron Burr for a variety of reasons, but most of them stem from the election of 1800. Jefferson runs with Aaron Burr. It's Jefferson and Burr. The presidential electors under the existing Constitution vote for 2 people.
And whoever got the most votes was president, and whoever got the second most was vice president, regardless of party.
But there's a tie between Jefferson and Burr. And the Constitution says if there's a tie, then the House of Representatives chooses between the 2.
And Jefferson's party doesn't control the Congress altogether. So some Federalists, some anti-Jefferson folks, they lost the election, but they still have the ability to basically make some mischief by picking Burr over Jefferson.
So you go through ballot after ballot after ballot.
Alexander Hamilton, staunch Federalist and no friend of Jefferson, believes him the lesser of 2 evils, considering Burr a man with no principle. On the 36th ballot, Hamilton's backing tips the scales.
Hamilton has thrown his support to Jefferson, and now Jefferson is president, Burr is vice president.
Jefferson never forgives Burr for this.
Here was Burr sitting as vice president, who has no job other than to preside over the Senate, being a pariah so far as Thomas Jefferson is concerned.
The thing that, of course, climaxed Burr's demise was the fact that he shot Alexander Hamilton in the famous duel in 1804. And so Burr finds himself an outcast.
Burr now is no longer vice president of the United States. He's killed the great Federalist champion, John Marshall's hero, Alexander Hamilton. He's a man without a party, a man without principles. What's he gonna do?
He does what every young American does that is out of luck in the East. He goes west.
We're sailing down the Mississippi River to New Orleans, crown jewel of the Louisiana Purchase, bought by Thomas Jefferson in 1803. This city controlled the trade of the West and offered a gateway to Mexico. No wonder the United States wanted it. When Jefferson buys almost 900,000 square miles of land west of the Mississippi River from France, the Louisiana Purchase, he doubles the size of the new nation overnight. Westward expansion is in the air, and opportunities for land and riches seem limitless.
Well, Burr sees his opportunity here.
Maybe he can find a way to have some degree of power, to have some degree of influence, to find a place where he can have some importance and engage again in leadership and politics.
From the very moment that he headed west, rumors began to circulate.
What actually is he doing out in the West?
James Wilkinson is governor of Louisiana and general of the United States Army.
Wilkinson probably is one of the most Machiavellian characters in the early Republic. And he assumed that there was eventually going to be war between the United States and Spain.
Wilkinson is initially a willing partner in Aaron Burr's schemes.
The accusation is that he's creating an army of his own.
Not only was he interested in invading Mexico, but he was going to sever the West, and that he was going to create his own independent country.
and he's going to set himself up as a kind of American Napoleon.
I'm at Blennerhassett Island on the Ohio River in what is now West Virginia. Late in 1806, a party of armed men set off from here in flatboats to rendezvous with Burr downriver. What they were doing would decide Aaron Burr's fate at his trial. As rumors spread of Burr's activities, General Wilkinson betrays his friend. He writes to President Jefferson, accusing Burr of a deep, dark, and widespread conspiracy to sail down the Mississippi with 7,000 men, seize New Orleans, and invade Mexico. The muster of 60 men at Blennerhassett's Island will be portrayed by the prosecution as visible proof of treason.
This is the power of political gossip, the power of how one's negative image followed him.
And Thomas Jefferson, who is still present, is very willing to believe every piece of dirt, every piece of gossip that's reported to him about Aaron Burr.
Thomas Jefferson, like a lot of other people, thought that Burr was not only a scoundrel, but a danger.
Jefferson had a vision of the United States and the West in particular, that this was going to be part of America, the United States of America, an empire for liberty or empire of liberty. And anything that interfered with that, he thought, was a threat.
This was a young and vulnerable republic. Its future was the reverse of clear. No one knew where this experiment in Republican government would go. Previous republics had all failed. When they failed, they always ended up in the hands of a strongman, of a demagogue, of a power-hungry maniac. And Jefferson saw Burr as someone who might very well fit that role.
In January 1807, Congress received an electrifying message from President Jefferson. Aaron Burr, former vice president, was plotting to invade Mexico and break up the United States. The evidence was not yet formal and legal, but Jefferson assured Congress that Burr's guilt was beyond question.
And the question is, who is going to try him?
None other than John Marshall, who has a complicated, to put it mildly, relationship to Thomas Jefferson.
Marshall will hear the case because Blennerhassett Island, a key location in Burr's alleged conspiracy, falls within his circuit. I'm in colonial Williamsburg, a place where it's still possible to recapture a sense of everyday life at this pivotal time in American history. In the courtroom of the old Capitol, present-day lawyers re-argue whether there is sufficient evidence to indict Aaron Burr on the crime of treason.
Counsel, please state your names for the record.
Judge Roger Gregory of the Fourth Circuit, Marshall's old circuit, sits in judgment. Counsels for prosecution and defense are practicing trial lawyers. Only the defendant, Aaron Burr, is portrayed by an actor.
Aaron Burr has been arrested and now comes before the court for a preliminary hearing on the charge of treason in assembling an armed force with a design to seize the city of New Orleans and to separate the western and the Atlantic states. This charge is punishable by death. The government shall present its evidence in support of probable cause for this charge.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, we have an affidavit from General Wilkinson, the commander of U.S. Army forces in New Orleans, as General Wilkinson's affidavit recounts.
General Wilkinson's testimony and letter to President Jefferson is primary evidence against Burr. The case will ultimately come down to the general's own credibility in front of the grand jury. Trial arguments are drawn from original trial transcripts.
This is not where we are deciding whether this man will be convicted of treason. The court right now is deciding the limit.
The court is quite aware of the burden of proof at this stage is probable cause.
John Marshall has a very strict standard for what counts as treason. Treason isn't just loose talk.
We're just asking for the information that the president has declared he has. And rather than provide this basic information, he has proclaimed Aaron Burr a traitor to the country. He has let slip the dogs of war. the hellhounds of persecution to hunt down my friend.
Aaron Burr, who was the best lawyer on his own side, said to Marshall, I need to see this key piece of evidence that Jefferson used to bring his charge of treason.
In President Jefferson's communication to Congress, dated 22nd January 1807 to both houses of Congress, he speaks of a letter and other papers received from General Wilkinson dated 21st October.
Burr said to Marshall, hey, look, I want you to order the President of the United States to deliver this piece of paper in your possession.
Jefferson says, I'm President of the United States. I have a lot of sensitive information, and you can't force me to actually disclose that.
It would be remarkable for this court to command that a private correspondence to the President of the United States
John Marshall is now once again faced with a decision.
Does the court really want to walk down that path of forcing the president to disclose very sensitive documents?
On the one hand, is he going to force Thomas Jefferson to reveal sensitive national security diplomatic secrets? On the other hand, is he going to deny Mr. Burr his fair trial?
Is not the court able to, in camera, look at those documents and determine whether or not there are things of a sensitive nature that you suggest?
Aaron Burr's request for a subpoena was a powerful courtroom reversal. The letter from General Wilkinson got the whole process started. But when Aaron Burr asked that President Jefferson produce it, he forced Jefferson into a defensive crouch, defending his own prerogatives and position. Chief Justice Marshall decides that the president can be subpoenaed, forcing Jefferson to provide Wilkinson's letter.
If in any court of the United States it has ever been decided that a subpoena cannot issue to the president, that decision is unknown to this court.
This was a big victory, not only for Burr, but for Marshall and the judicial process, because it proved one thing, that the President of the United States is not above the law. And Jefferson himself conceded that point when he delivered the papers.
As the government to confirm.
In spite of Marshall's reservations, the grand jury indicts Burr for treason. The full trial begins in August 1807 in Virginia's House of Delegates, with Chief Justice Marshall again presiding.
The theater involved, the legal theater involved, was extreme.
Apparently people were camping out along the riverfront, just south and below the Capitol proper, waiting to see what the next developments in this long case might be.
The old House of Delegates chamber in the Virginia Capitol building, where Aaron Burr's trial took place, is now a museum.
The floor no longer has the sand-filled boxes that were intended to capture at least some of the chewing tobacco that was being
Great arguments were made on both sides of the question.
The prosecution was prepared to call 140 witnesses, but Marshall stopped testimony after hearing only a dozen because no overt act of treason was proven.
The indictment charges the prisoner with levying war against the United States and alleges an overt act of levying war. That overt act must be proved by two witnesses. It is not proved by a single witness.
Jefferson fumes in the White House as the jury acquits Burr of treason, and there's widespread anger across the country. Marshall and Burr are burned in effigy in Baltimore. Marshall writes that the Burr case is the most unpleasant ever brought before a judge.
And then, very tellingly, Marshall says, I may perhaps have made it less serious to myself if I had followed the public will instead of the public law.
The Virginia Argus newspaper said that his performance in that trial showed that an independent judiciary is a very pernicious thing. Marshall's steadfast adherence to the Constitution, even in a treason trial against the unpopular Aaron Burr, showed just the opposite, that an independent judiciary is a very precious thing.
That's the great accomplishment of Marshall, to make interpret the Constitution as law and the role of the court as preserving it against the political branches. I would just emphasize how important he is to the fact that we live under under laws rather than under men.